A reading from Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 8, verses 14 and 15, and verses 21 through 23. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around him, they noticed some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders, and they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash it. And there are also many other traditions that they observe, the washing of cups, pots, and bronze kettles. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" He said to them, "Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition.'" Then he called the crowd again and said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that, by going in, can defile. But the things that come out are what defile. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within. They defile a person. If I didn't love Jesus so much and find so much life in connection to God, I honestly would consider leaving this entire religion behind. Jesus calls out the Pharisees as hypocrites, which they deserve, but we Christians have accepted that mantle from them eagerly. In my teenage years, I had a friend who performed Christianity way better than me. He never used foul language, took a much more prim and proper approach to relationships with young ladies, and fussed at me if I swore too loudly in public, as if me showing local children how much fun one can have with the letter F constituted the height of sinfulness. He also spent the bulk of our high school years finding ways to sabotage my relationships in order to exact revenge for a young lady liking me more than she liked him. Early in my career as a pastor, I got lambasted by a much more senior colleague for failing to submit paperwork properly. He had set a deadline for discount camp applications. We messed up and missed said deadline by a few days, but our kids still needed the discount. I called to try and smooth things over. He shouted and raged at me for not following procedure exactly. A few years later, it came out that during that season of his ministry, he sexually harassed a number of his church's female staff members. One night, I sat in my office and got absolutely picked apart, point by point, for my failings as a pastor. The church member representing the prosecution had brought plenty of ammunition, all of my insufficiencies. The list of what I had left undone was legion. They boiled down to the same issue, that despite my best and earnest efforts to care for her and her family, I simply hadn't done enough. In a religion built on a king who came to serve and not be served, her core question was, "What have you done for me lately?" I witnessed an entire generation of high-level denominational leaders stress rule following and make it difficult for anyone outside a certain mold to make it through the ordination process. If one could not string together the exact right words for things, they would delay your career for years. You had to boil down a lifetime of experience and a 3-year master's degree into a checklist of correct insider words, and then make sure to never put a toe out of line. So many of us lived in abject fear of their judgment if we proved unable to rise to their specific vision of perfection. Many others with tremendous gifts and graces never made it past their inspection. When this same group of leaders got inspired to start their own project, they helped themselves to tens of millions of dollars for their new thing because they saw no issue with, quote, sacking Egypt on their way out the door, end quote. Following the rules stopped mattering when it came to applying it to themselves. All sin does harm. Sin combined with hypocrisy does twice the harm: the original harm and the cognitive dissonance of one so faithful doing such wrong. As I seem unable to stop writing about, the world has noticed that we say one thing and so often do another. Crusaders for judgment and purity getting busted for sex crimes, Religious leaders seeking donations from struggling people keep ending up living large with mansions, private jets, and $1,000 designer sneakers. A faith who claims to love the poor, the stranger, and the widow keeps selling anyone down the river for the sake of earthly power. I know, too, that we've been at this for millennia. None of this constitutes an innovation. In our Old Testament iteration, God's people got trapped in an endless spiral of failure that eventually landed them in exile. 2 millennia later, military crusaders, in the name of God, gave way to selling indulgences to fund masterworks of architecture, which in turn gave way to Christian-on-Christian violence, where we fought wars over the correct way to worship the Prince of Peace. Christians aren't unique in this. Hypocrisy courses through the veins of all humans. Even a cursory survey of human history quickly proves our individual and collective capacity to profess one thing and act entirely contrary. The chorus from Godspell's "Alas for You," Stephen Schwartz's rendering of a similar scene between Jesus and the Pharisees in Matthew 23, keeps running through my head. You snakes, you brood of vipers, you cannot escape being devil's food. I send you prophets, I send you preachers, sages and rages and ages of teachers. Nothing can bar your mood. All of this isn't inevitable. We have a better option if we will take it. Destiny and human predilection don't bind us to inevitable hypocrisy. With God's help, we can live differently. We can listen to the prophets, preachers, sages, rages, and teachers. We can let the Holy Spirit in and participate in our own sanctification. Then we can stop traumatizing each other and live as a better witness to God's reality.